We're recording. So, hi everyone. I am so excited to be here with Steve Sims. Thank you for joining me this early morning, Steve. And Steve is, I just recently met him in Los Angeles, and he's a pretty phenomenal guy. He just wrote a book called Bluefishing and the art of making things happen. And he really is the guy to make things happen. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit further, Steve, if you want, and if you want to expand on that at all. And yeah, so thank you for joining me.
Hey, it's a pleasure, and thank you for the cop-out. All right, so who am I? Forbes called me the real-life Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. I'm the guy that sent people down to the Titanic, taking over museums in Florence for dinner parties, and had Andrea Bocelli come in and serenade them. I put people on the back of MotoGP bikes with world-class racing drivers just for shits and giggles. I put people on stage with their favorite rock star and got them guitar lessons by ZZ Top. So I'm the guy that you come to when you've got a dream and you can afford it.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That must be pretty fun to sit and listen to people's dreams and wants and kind of help make them happen. It's you're like the giver of joy, I would say. All right, well, we're going to just kind of dive right into some questions. So I've been reading your book. I only got it a couple days ago, so I didn't get through it yet, but I do have some questions about it. And so you started out as a bricklayer with your family. And and in your book, you say that at one point you looked down from your ladder or the roof, and you saw your whole sort of lineage, and at that moment you realized that you had to get out of there, and you basically moved to Hong Kong. So tell me a little bit about what was it about that moment that was so transformative for you?
Well, my family were from County Cork. And they moved over to England, and then I was born. So I was the only member of my family that was born in English soil. So I've been getting that joke for basically all of my life about, we speak slower for the Brit, that kind of stuff. So you know what the Irish are like. When I left school at 15, and we're talking about the 80s now, and also England. In England, you can finish school earlier than you can in America, and I'm here in Los Angeles. So we finished school at 15. I didn't go to college. Day after being 15 and leaving school, my dad threw me onto the building site. So as an Irish kid, I always had this kind of why going on in my head. Why have I got to do that? Why is this? Why does it work that way? I was that very inquisitive, what I called 4-year-old. I'm 51 now, but I do refer to myself as that 51 4-year-old. So I've still got that mentality of constantly questioning why. Well, why has it got to happen that way? Why have we got to do that? I why it to death.
Yeah.
And I remember being on the building site, not knowing that I didn't like building, but not knowing what I wanted to do. And a lot of people usually need to know what they want to do before they jump out of the what they don't want to do. I just knew I had to get away from this. And I remember climbing up a ladder, and I was on a scaffolding bench, and I got off the top of the ladder, and it was so vivid, I can see it now. And I turned around, and there was my dad, my uncle, my cousin, my granddad, some more of my cousins, and they were all down this building line. Mm. And I saw my cousins were like a couple of years younger than me. My granddad was like in his 80s. And they're all there. Yeah. And I just thought, here it is. Here's my timeline. And I knew I didn't want to be a bricklayer. Didn't know what I wanted to do. It got to tea break time at 11 o'clock. We went downstairs. We're sitting in this shed, having a cup of tea, having a break between the building. And I looked at my granddad, and I said to my granddad, did you always want to do this? And he went, hell no. No one wants to always do this. And I said, well, I know I don't. And he said, if you don't get out today, you will. He said, the bottom line of it is, he said, tomorrow comes, and it comes with about 10 years added onto it. Before you think it's going to have been too late. Yeah. So I turned around to my dad, and I quit that afternoon. And boy, that was the happiest family I was in for a few weeks, as I kind of sat around at home, no money, no job, everyone thinking I've turned my back on my family. And I just knew I had to try something else. So I tried insurance salesman. I tried book sales. I tried cake deliveries. I tried warehouse packing. I did all these different things. And a friend of mine was in the banking industry. And of course, it was the 80s. And the 80s was just going crazy on banking. And they were actually transferring a bunch of people over to Hong Kong. Established stockbrokers. That's the key. Established stockbrokers, they were transferring over to Hong Kong. I went along to the bank one day for an interview for an intern, but instead of going in the door for the intern, I actually went into this conference room while they were talking about these brokers going there. I put my name down, and shock, horror, surprise, bingo, they actually sent me a ticket thinking that I worked for the bank, and they sent me to Hong Kong as an established stockbroker. I know. I landed on the Saturday with all of these stockbrokers. I got drunk with them Saturday night, got drunk with them Sunday night, did orientation on Monday, and I was fired on Tuesday morning. So it was hysterical. But I knew I didn't want to do X. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what Y was, but I just knew that I had to get closer to it. So now I'm stuck in Hong Kong, and I thought, well, I'm no longer a bricklayer.
Yes.
So I'm getting somewhere. Don't know where it is, but I'm somewhere. So that's how my whole life started.
And so you kind of discovered your passion and your real drive sort of through the process of going from one thing to another, and then just developing it over time, as opposed to just having this light bulb moment. I think a lot of people think that discovering your passion is just suddenly like you're sitting there and you have this euphoric moment of, oh, now I know my passion and my reason for being. And typically, I know even for myself, I mean, I started out in geology, and now I'm in event management and business, I mean, it's such a strange, but you kind of discover it over time. And I think that understanding that it's a process is an important piece. So interesting.
So it's also a scar. I learned what I was good at and what I was passionate at by falling over and failing on everything else. Yeah. And I grew to love and respect my failings because they taught me what not to waste time on, what not to do. And you do events, and you know that I do events as well. Yeah. The biggest lessons that we learn are when things go wrong. And so when the caterers don't turn up on time, or when the contract has you swindled in not being able to charge extra expenses, or when there's a cap on the amount of people you come out. When all of those things are in the contract and you at the end of the day suddenly get screwed, that's the greatest education in the world. So I learned that falling down and falling over was not a problem. The problem was when I stopped getting back up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had a similar experience, just this past year. And, I literally woke up the very next day and started on the next event. Because I was like, if I let this drown me now, I will drown. If I start swimming and just kind of focusing on the next thing, I will get through it. And I totally agree. It's the greatest lesson. And I like how you put it, in your book, where you say, you pay to go to college and you pay to get these courses. Well, you know what, when you lose money or you have these, trials in your business, you are just paying for your education, and it truly is your education. So yeah. Getting back up is the key. Well, you kind of answered my second question a little bit, because I was going to actually ask you about failure and what your thoughts are. So we can kind of, because that's really a big part of what we're trying to teach some of the people that are coming to Generation Now. Because my event is all about providing a realistic look at entrepreneurship to emerging entrepreneurs. And I think that there's this myth, especially in the corporate world, that failure is the end. And failure is just, you might as well curl up and die at that point or go somewhere else. When really, when you look at modern companies, you see a lot of them starting to really embrace that culture of failure and saying, put your neck out there, try these ideas, learn what works, learn what doesn't work, and grow that way, as opposed to just trying to always, color inside the lines and do as you're told and punch your clock, it's a mentality. And so I think, a lot of us have kind of gone through it where we've experienced the failure. So I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit. I mean, have you, I guess when you were first starting out, when that's usually when the most failures sort of happen, because you're figuring it all out, right? Is that sort of your experience?
No. I learned to, as I say, regard and respect my failures. And if you're learning from something and you're growing stronger from something, then why do you want to stop learning those experiences? Why do you want to stop getting educated? And if you stop getting educated, then it's because you stop learning lessons. It's because you stop trying so much. Now, as in the early stages, 9 times out of 10, you learn those lessons that you don't want to learn. You learn those lessons of bad accounting. You learn those lessons of bad invoicing, bad infrastructure, people running off of your company and taking your clients. You learn the power of an NDA. You learn how worthless the bloody thing is unless you're willing to sue someone. You learn all of those horrible lessons then, and you get into a flow that you go, okay, fine. Because if you haven't been broke, screwed, sued, ripped off, cheated, if you haven't been any of those things, wait, because they will happen, because it's the course and it's the scars of what gives us our entrepreneurial badge. It's what happens to us. It's sitting up at 2 o'clock in the morning because you've got a choice. Do you feed the kids, pay the electric bill, or pay the staff? You've suddenly got those kind of things. Where can you borrow money from to get over the next payment? That's what entrepreneurs go through. Now, when you do that and you get over those hurdles, when you've got over that, you've borrowed the money, you've paid the money back, you've secured it so you're not in that position again, you go, well, hang on a minute. That taught me that I can do this. And I remember my dad said to me before, no one ever drowned by falling in the water. They drowned by staying there. Mm-hmm. So after something bad's happened, you need to look around and look at it and go, I conquered that. Mm-hmm. Now, it may happen to you again. Very rarely will it happen a third time. Most times it won't happen a second time, because if it hurt enough, you don't grab, a hot kettle by your hands anymore. You learn these lessons and then you actually become stronger. You want to keep trying. And I remember, I'm a fan of motorcycles, in case you hadn't worked that out. And last year I was in Texas and I was with a MotoGP team. And I've got the badges with all the other bunch of, toffs and snobs and sponsors and all these, basically people in there. And all the mechanics are looking at us thinking, they're a bunch of rich kids, they're only in it to stare because they're privileged. I wanted to know about the motorbike. And there was this mechanic and he was working on the front end of the motorcycle. And I crouched down and I started talking to him. Now, this guy's working, ready for a race. He doesn't want me asking him questions. And that was obvious. But I still persisted. And I said to him, and he never looked at me once. I said to him, I said, hey, what you doing? He's like, oh, I'm working. Yeah, what you working on? I was an excitable little kid. And he turned around and he said, I'm looking for the point of fail. And he was very aggressive and abrupt with me. Mm-hmm. And I said, you're what? And again, never out of our entire correspondence, our conversation, did he ever look at me. He's still engaged in his engine. He said, I'm looking for the point of fail. If I can find a chip, a crack, a stress fracture, but then we can repair that because we know that's where it's weakest and the bike could go stronger. So we have to find his point of fail. Mm-hmm. Now I got up, walked out of the garage and recorded that to myself, because this was a company that spent millions on bikes, and racing teams spend millions per race. And they were looking for the point of fail, because only once they found their weakest link could they strengthen that to make it go faster and find the next weakest link. And therefore, that point of fail was growth to them. They wanted to find the failure. They wanted to find that crack, that chip, that corrosion, that rub, that scrub. They wanted to find that. At the end of the race, I actually went back to find this guy and chatted with him and spoke with him. And then it got into what I did. We've stayed friends since then. But I tell you, you can get the greatest information from the most incredible places that you never would have thought of. But I encourage you, if you haven't failed recently, and I guarantee you I'll fail tomorrow. I failed yesterday. I'll probably fail today. Maybe it'll be small, maybe it'll be big. But push yourself to that point of failure and educate yourself to grow.
I love that perspective. It's funny because I actually never thought about it like that. I keep saying, okay, I'm going to get over this failure. I'm going to learn what I've learned. But you're right. You should really want to keep growing. And so
Yeah.
what is sort of like mind blown over here. I
Embrace them. Every
love it.
time you
Yeah.
fail, yeah,
Yeah.
embrace it.
Yeah, and it's funny because in my mind, I always said, I'm actually grateful for my failures and all these things because of what I've learned and how I've grown. But I've never thought about, wanting to because it's hard, right? It's shitty. But at the same time, I've never thought about going through it again or going through the next thing, So that's a really great perspective. I love that. And I think so valuable for young people or anybody really. So that's awesome. Well, I know you want to get on with your day, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But you know what? I actually want to just quickly show your book. One second. I moved it.
Bye.
Sorry. I forgot to bring it to my desk. So anyway, this is Steve's new book. And so we're going to link it below. And I encourage everyone to check it out. We are actually going to do a giveaway on the Haste and Hustle social media sites. So we're going to give away a copy of his book, or 2 copies actually. So it's awesome. I've been reading it and learning so much. And clearly you are a man of lots of wisdom and interest. And honestly, your stories are just very interesting. I actually am just kind of enamored by it. So thank you for writing it, and thank you for the taking the time to speak to the hustlers out there that are starting out. So yeah, thank you. And
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, always a pleasure. So I will end it there, and you have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.